So bulb mode photography is a creative choice. Used correctly, it can work really well. Today I'm going to show you how I use bulb mode photography to photograph a location that I've wanted to visit for a very long time. So Paynton Pier opened in around 1879. Back in the 1800s, early cameras were operated by using a pneumatic bulb to compress the air, and that forced the shutter to stay open. And provided the photographer held that bulb compressed, the shutter would stay open for as long as you wanted it to. Well, I have to be honest guys, things are not actually going to plan, so I've come back into the van to have a cup of coffee. We've just been interrupted by a beach cleaning tractor which has just obliterated the nice pristine sand that I used to have in front of me that was forming part of my photograph. And to top it off, we've now got a unforecasted, quite heavy shower building up and moving across the scene, which isn't really conducive to standing outside and giving you a really good video on how to use bulb mode photography. However, what this does do is it presents some really interesting, challenging, changeable light. So I'm going to have my cup of coffee, and when this blows over, I'm going to go back outside and show you some more about bulb mode photography. But whilst we're here, there's a few things that I can explain to you, a few essentials that you need to know before we set up the photograph. Now, as I said, back in 1879 when they built this pier, photographers used to hold the shutter open using a rubber bulb full of air. Things are much more sophisticated now, and we no longer have to do that. But the principle is still the same. There are a number of ways you can operate your camera, but what is essential is that you have an SLR or a mirrorless camera or a really high-end compact camera which will allow you to use bulb mode photography. And this is normally shown on your camera on a dial or a setting where it will actually have a B, or actually use the word on the top plate of the camera, maybe where it just says bulb itself. Any vibration, any movement is going to record on your sensor or the film. So the next most important thing is to make sure that your camera is stable and sturdy and cannot move. And to do that, a good quality tripod is going to be absolutely essential. Now, you're also going to need another way of releasing the shutter on the camera. If you use the shutter release on your camera, you're going to transfer any of that vibration straight down into the camera, onto the sensor or onto the film. Now, you'll say a lot of cameras have got a built-in self-timer mode to allow that vibration to settle down. And it's true, they have. But that also means for bulb mode photography, you have to have a built-in timer on your camera as well for setting up for bulb mode. And not everybody's camera is going to have that. So I'm going to show you how to use an app that I've got on my mobile phone, produced by Leaf Filters, that will allow me to actually calculate the exposure that I need and also time it using my phone. And then I can use a cable release to start the shutter and stop the shutter and prevent any of those vibrations whatsoever. Now, if you're shooting at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, then it might be enough just to use the natural light levels falling to get those really long shutter speeds. But if, like me, you're out today and it's getting a little bit brighter now, then you may want to use neutral density filters. I have a 6-stop, a 10-stop and a 15-stop that allow me to control the light coming into the camera and decide exactly how long I want to leave that shutter open for. Well, it looks like the rain shower has finally managed to subside and go over a little bit. So I think I'm going to get out and set the camera up, and I can show you now exactly how to use bulb mode to take these images. So with so many issues facing you when doing bulb mode photography, you might well ask, why bother? What's the point of going to all this hassle to get a photograph? Well, for me, it's all about the subject. And in this particular case, it's about simplifying the image. Simplification can sometimes just be about removing the texture from a surface, and that's what we're going to aim to achieve today. We want to flatten out those waters and create a really quite interesting subject with graphic images and lines of the pier going off into the distance. But it's important to remember that it doesn't matter what method you're going to use to achieve your photographs. It's all about the subject. If If it's not right for the subject, then just stop and use something different. Well, I've put the camera up on the tripod, but I'll probably set it up in what's possibly the worst sort of conditions really for bulb mode photography. And the reason being is I'm on a beach, and the beach, the ground is really quite soft. So what I've done is I've jammed the tripod legs into the sand a little bit. Now with certain types of tripods you've got to be a bit careful, so I've made sure that I've wound the bottom sections out so they're well clear of getting any grit or anything into those delicate sort of threads. So the composition that I've set up here this morning really relies on the pier stretching and taking your eye into the distance. And in the foreground we've got a little bit of gritty sand, and beyond that we've got this water. Now, under normal situations, the water's going to have this texture on it, but what we're going to do with the long exposure today is we're going to smooth that water out completely, so it's just a sheer, flat surface. Now, I'm hoping we're still going to get some of the reflection and some of the shadow areas on the water that the pier's casting itself, but the sun's getting higher and higher, so it's going to get harder to get that. So we've got to crack on and get this photograph nailed as soon as we can. Now, preparation, like with a lot of things, is paramount to the success of bulb mode photography. It's critical that you set up your composition first, because when I put these really dark filters in front of the lens, you're not going to be able to see your composition anymore. It's also critical that your camera's locked down and it's steady, the tripod's locked up, all the controls are exactly where you need them to be. That you've got your filters ready, your cable release ready, and also, of course, that your camera's on bulb mode, and you turn your vibration reduction off on your lens, like you should whenever you're using your tripod. Any opportunity to introduce vibration into this picture will ruin it. So before we go and take this picture, I really need to get the shutter speed completely nailed first. Now, I use an app on my phone by Leaf Filters. It's a free app and it works really well. You can download it and it'll work with their filters, but it'll work with other people's as well. Now, it has settings for 6-stop, 10-stop and 15-stop filters as well. Now, I've already set the exposure up on the camera and I can see that at f11 ISO 100 I get about 1/100th of a second. And when I actually put that into the camera and select the 15-stop filter, I can see that I'm getting about 5 minutes 20. Now, I don't really want an exposure that long. I want a long exposure, but if it doesn't need to be 5 minutes, I'm not going to keep it at 5 minutes. I want about 3 minutes to start with. And I can see by adjusting the app, I can get to about 1/60th of a second. I will get 3 minutes and 20 seconds, which I want to try first. And I'm going to get that right on the camera by moving the ISO slightly. To get from 1/100th to 1/60th of a second, I'm not even going to have to go up a full stop. Maybe ISO 125, 150 is going to be about enough to get it right. So let's dial this in and then get some filters loaded. So that's filter fitted. This contraption I've put around the outside of the filter is something I came up with after my last video. I was really struggling with a bit of light leak, so I've just made up a little wraparound device just to protect the filter a little bit from that. So we're going to see how that works today. Next thing, I'm going to fit my cable release to the camera. They all fit differently on different cameras. Mine's got a little thing here on the front of the camera where I can actually fit it. Okay, so let's make the exposure. Now, the Leaf Filters is really good because the Leaf Filter app has actually got a built-in timer, and this is why I don't need to use the camera self-built-in timer. My table release has got a self-lock on it, so I can just lock it and slide it up, and all I've got to do is start the filter and the shutter at the same time, and everything will take care of itself. See you in 3 minutes and 20 seconds. I suggest that you check out this video next because I use bulb mode photography to great effect to improve my seascape photographs in my hometown of Plymouth. See you in the next video.